I'm James Robinson. I'm a university professor at the University of Chicago in the Harris School of Public Policy in the Department of Political Science. My work has been on the long-run economic and political divergence in the world. We're trying to understand for 30 years why is the world divided into poor and rich countries, and what's that got to do with the differences in the way they're organized politically.
2024년 노벨 경제학상 수상자인 제임스 로빈슨 교수에게 한국 경제의 과거와 현재, 미래를 묻습니다.
I'm very happy to be here, very excited to be here. I'd like to thank the distinguished panel for gracing me with their presence.
안녕하세요. 반갑습니다. 노벨상 수상자 특별강연 진행을 맡은 홍진경입니다. 오늘은 2024년 노벨 경제학상을 수상한 시카고대 제임스 로빈슨 교수님을 모시고 왜 어떤 나라는 부유하고 또 어떤 나라는 가난한지 그 비밀을 풀어보는 시간을 마련했습니다. 먼저 김진희 교수님, 이벌찬 기자님, 그리고 김두열 교수님, 손지혜 교수님과 함께합니다. 안녕하세요.
안녕하세요.
네, 와주셔서 감사합니다. 로빈슨 교수님, 오늘 여기 나와 계신 패널 분들 중에 좀 낯이 익은 분들도 계시죠?
Professor Kim.
아, 어떤 인연이세요?
We've known each other since he was a student in Los Angeles at the University of California, Los Angeles. I was a professor at the University of Southern California.
아, 학생일 때 교수님이셨군요.
네,
오, 근데 교수님이 이제 노벨상 수상을 하셔서 엄청 자랑스러우시겠어요.
네, 그때 뵀을 때는 이렇게까지 유명하신 분이 될지는 몰랐었습니다.
이렇게 또 대단하신 분이 우리 한국을 방문해 주셔서 또 영광이라고 생각합니다. 이제 본격적으로 부국의 조건 뜨거운 박수로 시작해 볼게요. 네.
This picture of the Korean Peninsula at night sort of reminds me of something I suppose I've been fascinated with since I was an adolescent, since I was a teenager, which is, why does the world look the way it does? You see that South Korea is a sort of blaze of light and electricity, and that signifies enormous kind of economic progress and economic development. North Korea, on the other hand, just next door, is black, almost completely black. So what I'd like to do today is talk about those differences, not just within Korea, but all over the world, and talk about the sort of theory that I've developed to try to understand those differences and that divergence. What's particularly interesting as a social scientist is how the Korean sort of a divergence and the Korean experience helps you to understand more generally the differences between poor and rich countries, between economic successes and economic failures. South Korea has done something spectacular and much better than the world average. And you can see North Korea down at the bottom is as poor as the sub-Saharan African countries. So North Korea hasn't grown economically at all over this period. If anything, it's stagnated. Okay, so there's this enormous divergence on the Korean peninsula. And you might think, well, income, a lot of people criticize income as a measure of development. So we could look at it in a different way, which I think really drives home how this matters for people's lives. So if we look at the next slide, I just plot data on life expectancy at birth. And what you see historically, going all the way back to the start of the last century, but just if I started in the 1950s at the time of the partition of the Korean Peninsula, you see there's very little difference in life expectancy at birth between North and South Korea. But what's happened over the last 30 years is this enormous divergence in life expectancy. So life expectancy today is 10 years higher in South Korea than it is in North Korea. Jared Diamond in his book Guns, Germs and Steel, also proposed a geographical and ecological theory of distribution of prosperity in the world. So some scholars have emphasized geography. Other scholars have emphasized culture and religion. But what's fascinating about the Korean experience is it's almost like an experiment. So it's what we call a natural experiment. There's experimental-like variation in what we're interested in. And where does that come from? It comes from the fact that in the early 1950s, the Korean peninsula, which had 1,000 years of common culture, history, language, all sorts of things, was arbitrarily divided in a military conflict at more or less the 38th parallel. North and South Korea, similar history under the Joseon dynasty, similar culture, language, similar food. Many initial things were held constant. Geography was held constant. It means that to the extent that there's subsequently some big difference emerges in economic outcomes between North and South Korea, it's very plausible that you can attribute that to the different ways in which North and South Korea were organized economically and politically.
아니, 저는 사실 남한이 잘 살고 북한이 이렇게 못 사는 이유가 북한이 그냥 공산주의를 채택해서 그렇게 된 거라고 생각했는데 그게 전부가 아닌가 봐요.
I think communism is an example of a much more general phenomenon in the world, which we call extractive institutions. So extractive institutions take different forms in different parts of the world. In North Korea or Cuba, they take this form of communism. But in other parts of the world, they're not communistic at all. They're avowedly capitalistic, but they still have this feature of being extractive. So I don't want to focus on the distinction between communism and capitalism. Economic success or economic failure is determined by the institutions that societies themselves build.
오늘 이 자리에는 그 북한의 여군 출신 2006년에 탈북한 이소연 씨가 나와 계시는데요.
저도 대한민국 와서 저 사진을 보고요. 내가 저런 암흑 속에서 살았구나라고 느꼈습니다. 근데 대한민국 청년들이 댓글을 굉장히 잘 쓰는데요. 북한이 지구를 생각해서 전기를 유일하게 안 쓴다. 이런 댓글을 제가 봤거든요.
네.
봤는데 사실 그렇지는 않고요. 평양은 제가 가보니까 범평양 중심으로 저녁마다 전기를 줍니다. 그래서 평양 사람은 특혜를 받는 것이 맞구나라고 생각을 했고, 그런데 나는 왜를 생각을 못했어요. 지방에서는 그 전기를 1년에 명절 때마다 공급을 받았습니다. 북한의 체제를 선전하는 중요한 영화를 봐야 되거나 뉴스를 볼 때 전기를 2시간, 3시간씩 줍니다. 그때마다 전기를 받던 기억이 있고요. 그 전력난을 스스로 장마당에서 전기 배터리 만들고 자동차 부속품 배터리를 떼어가지고 스스로 빛을 해결을 했습니다. 전기 해결한 게 아니라 빛을 해결하고 살았기 때문에 저는 북한은 평양공화국이랑 지방공화국이랑 나뉜다.
사실 분단할 때 한국이 울고 북한이 웃었습니다. 왜냐하면 그 당시에 이제 전기 공급량만 가지고 봤을 때에 한국이랑 북한의 비율이 1대9였어요. 그러니까 북한 쪽에서 전기 발전량을 대부분 다 보유를 하고 있었습니다. 그런데 이게 이제 우리나라에서는 30년 가까이 전기 공급을 제한을 하다가 1978년도에 이제 원자력 발전을 넘어가면서 극복이 됐는데, 아이러니한 거는 착취적 제도를 가지고 있는 북한 같은 경우에는 8년 뒤에 똑같이 원자력 발전을 내놨지만 그거는 사실상 지금 드러난 상황으로는 핵발전, 그러니까 핵무기 개발용이었던 거죠. 그러니까 이런 것만 딱 전기만 놓고 봐도 아주 극명하게 드러나는 것 같습니다.
It's because of the politics. It's because of the political institutions. It's because political power is monopolized by an extremely narrow, non-representative elite, and they've organized the society for their benefit. That's what's important. North Korea suffered from 70 years of dictatorship and personalized autocracy. So that's created extractive economic institutions. So we say that's extractive political institutions. So it's politics that creates the economy. Extractive political institutions create extractive economic institutions.
근데 교수님, 분단 이후에 한동안은 북한이 남한보다 더 잘 살던 시기도 있었죠?
네, 식민지기에 일본이 북한 지역에다가 많은 공장을 만들게 되면서 북한이 산업화가 먼저 되었습니다.
네.
그런데 이제 1960년대 초에 남한의 경우에는 우리가 통상적으로 알고 있는 산업화 그리고 수출을 통한 경제 발전의 길을 갔던 반면에 북한에서는 로빈슨 교수께서 이야기한 것과 같은 착취적인 방법의 경제 발전을 추구를 했죠.
로빈슨 교수는 성공한 국가와 실패한 국가의 결정적 차이를 제도에서 찾습니다. 소수 엘리트가 권력을 독점하고 다수의 부하 자원을 빼앗는 구조가 착취적 제도. 모두가 경제 활동에 자유롭게 참여하고 사유재산권과 공정한 경쟁이 보장되는 시스템이 포용적 제도입니다.
South Korea was not a democracy between 1961 and the late 1980s. We started talking about democracy since 1980s. So let's think about the political institutions in South Korea since the end of the Second World War. What you had was, under President Ri, you had a democracy under the First Republic, but then that collapsed in 1961, and then you had military regimes and you had autocratic regimes under President Park, and then finally democracy. So is that inclusive politically? I think it's a lot more inclusive politically than what happened in North Korea. Okay, even during President Park's, Yonsin, even Yushin's constitution, South Korea was a lot more inclusive politically than North Korea. President Park, there he is at the head of the table. It's a meeting of the export promotion meeting in the 1960s. President Park, for whatever reason, was obsessed with developing South Korea. He was obsessed with economic growth, whether because of the contest with North Korea, whether because of his own social background. So one hypothesis about that is a sort of sociological argument that, it was the first time that Korea had been governed by a kind of rural middle class who kind of had a very strong work ethic, put Korea onto this path from the late 1960s. And here's the way I would think about this, is that none of this would have been sustainable without the transition to inclusive political institutions.
한국은 유엔 무역개발회의 설립 이후 개발도상국에서 선진국으로 도약한 최초의 국가입니다. 로빈슨 교수는 최근 한국 경제의 성장 과정을 연구하고 있습니다. 그가 주목하는 건 1970년대의 한국 경제입니다.
I'm James Robinson.
로빈슨 교수와의 만남에 흔쾌히 응한 김철수 전 상공부 장관. 그는 1970년대 한미 철강 회담을 이끈 주역으로 수출진흥 확대 회의에 직접 참여했습니다.
My work has been so much on comparative economic development, on why countries succeed.
I read your book
Okay,
on
all right.
why nations fail.
So part of the story in that book, part of the, a component of what we call inclusive institutions is a kind of state with capacity. Something that struck us, for example, is these export promotion meetings that President Park would oversee every month. How did it work? I don't know. Is that clear?
I think it was everybody agreed. I think the people as a whole agreed that through exports we can get over the poverty that we had experienced in the early 1960s. We had per capita income was, as you know, about $80. We had no capital, no resources to speak of. And the only way that we can get over this poverty was through export promotion.
미국과 일본의 수출을 진흥시키기 위한 확대
반류와 기업, 학계 관계자 약 100명이 참여한 수출진흥 확대 회의. 박정희 전 대통령은 1965년부터 직접 참석해 이 회의를 주재했습니다.
3억 5천만 달러를 4억 2천만 달러로
이 자리에서 국가적 차원의 수출 목표가 결정됐고 그 목표를 달성한 기업에는 포상이 주어지기도 했습니다.
수출 목표의 달성은 경제 목표 달성을 위한 기본 조건으로 전 국민의 협조가 긴밀히 요청되고 있습니다.
What is the incentive for the other way? So why would the trading companies want to be in constant contact with the ministry?
They want the government to negotiate certain stumbling blocks they face in the US market or in Europe or elsewhere. It may be a problem with financing export work. And other issues were brought to the government to try to resolve these issues for them.
Here, there was a real project and there was a goal. I think that's an important difference.
We used to end this dinner by singing an export promotion song.
And this is the start of K-pop.
(1964년) 수출 1억 달러를 달성한 후 13년 만인 1977년. 한국은 마침내 수출 100억 달러를 돌파하며 놀라운 성장을 이뤄냈습니다. 1980년대 들어서는 한국의 착취적인 정치제도 역시 포용적인 정치제도로 변모합니다. 정치 권력을 장악한 이들이 그 권력을 이용해 경쟁을 제한하고 독점하려 할 때마다 저항하며 거리로 나선 시민들의 힘 덕분이었습니다. 민주화를 향한 시민들의 강력한 의지로 한국은 경제적 성공을 넘어 정치적 포용사회로까지 나아갈 수 있었습니다. 실제로 한국의 민주적 선거 지수는 1980년 후반 민주화와 함께 크게 향상되기 시작했습니다. 포용적 정치 제도로의 전환은 한국 경제의 빠른 성장으로 이어졌습니다. 이것이 한국의 로빈슨 교수가 주목한 이유입니다.
In fact, if you look at that data I showed you on innovation, on patenting, for example, that rockets up not during President Park's period, but after President Park leads power. So for me, what I see all this innovation in Korea today would be sort of unimaginable under the military. That's something that political inclusion has brought to this country. This is just a measure of electoral democracy in the world. Korea looks something like the Asian average, something like the world average, until the late 1980s when there's this democratization and this enormous improvement in political inclusion in Korea that led to that is associated in the data, in my own research, with much more rapid economic growth, let me emphasize.
진짜 우리 잘해왔나 봐요. 로빈슨 교수님, 이런 제도의 중요성을 보여주는 사례가 오직 전 세계의 한국뿐인가요?
That's just one divergence. We want to talk about the world. The Korean Peninsula is one example of a divergence that's taken place in the modern world. In the Americas, a very similar type of divergence took place. Okay? So if I went back kind of deeper into history, at the early 19th century when the Americas became independent, North America, the United States became independent from British colonialism, Latin America became independent from Spanish colonialism, there were very small differences in levels of economic development between Latin America and North America. But then what you've seen over that last period is an enormous divergence within the Americas. Average income per capita in Latin America is doing better than North Korea, but it's still around $12,000 US. North America, $60,000. So there's an enormous divergence occurred within the Americas. So these divergences have occurred all over the world over the past 250 years, not just in the Korean Peninsula.
근데 중요한 게 국가가 잘 살아서 그런 제도를 가진 건지 아니면 반대로 그런 제도를 가져서 국가가 잘 사는 건지에 대한 분석이 어렵거든요.
네.
그 인과관계를 분석하는데 말씀하신 대로 잘 살고 못 살아서 가는 게 아니라 가르고 나서 보니까 잘 살고 못 살았다는 이해. 그거를 전 세계적인 데이터를 가지고 분석해서 제도가
네.
차지하는 역할이 크다.
대단한 연구를 하셨네요, 진짜.
You know, of my research is that, you know, these divergences are all kind of fundamentally the same, and economic success or economic failure is determined by the institutions that societies themselves build. So what do I mean by institutions? I mean the rules that create incentives and opportunities in societies. Let me give you an example which I like very much, which connects institutions to incentives and opportunities and economic growth. This is Thomas Edison's patent for a light bulb, 1880. So Edison invented the light bulb, brilliant man, and he took out a patent. So what's a patent? Protects your intellectual property rights. You invent something like the light bulb. Here's the thing about invention and ideas. You come up with something. It's very easy for other people to copy that idea, to copy that invention, okay? And if you're an inventor, you know the fact that other people can copy your ideas reduces your incentives. That's the idea. So a patent protects your intellectual property rights. It's that you have a patent, it stops other people stealing your technology or borrowing your technology or using your technology without your permission. And that protects your intellectual property rights, and that creates incentives to innovate. Why is that significant? Patent system is an economic institution that creates incentives for innovation, and innovation is critical for driving economic growth. At the time we wrote the book, the two richest people in the world were Bill Gates and Carlos Slim. Both of them very brilliant, driven entrepreneurs, you know. But what's significant is not how rich they were or are, but how they made their money. Carlos Slim, with no regulations. He could charge whatever price he wanted, and there was no competition. He could keep competitors out.
2010년부터 4년 연속 세계 최고 부자의 자리를 지킨 카를로스 슬림. 그는 멕시코 통신 시장을 장악하고 있는 거대 재벌입니다. 하지만 그의 영향력은 경제 영역을 넘어섭니다.
Esto es Slim. Aquí de lo que estamos hablando es realmente quiénes mandan en la democracia. Esto es participando en estos actos en donde intentaban meter en cintura a todos los políticos, ¿no? De pronto hacen unos actos en el castillo de Chapultepec.
아메리카 모빌의 통신 독과점 구조는 정부와 정당, 규제기관의 긴밀한 유착 속에서 공고히 유지됐습니다. 그 결과 멕시코의 통신비는 OECD 국가 평균을 상회하지만 통신 품질은 같은 남미 국가들과 비교하더라도 최하위권에 머무르고 있습니다. 통신시장 독과점으로 세계적인 갑부가 된 카를로스 슬림. 하지만 미국의 빌 게이츠는 달랐습니다. 그는 아이디어 하나로 세계적인 억만장자가 된 혁신가였습니다. 마이크로소프트를 창업한 그는 전 세계의 PC 운영체제 시장을 장악하며 막대한 부를 축적했습니다. 하지만 빌 게이츠 역시 독과점의 유혹으로부터 자유롭진 않았습니다. 그때 그를 막아선 건 바로 미국의 제도였습니다.
In or about June 1995, Mr. Gates, did you become involved in the planning for some meetings with Netscape?
No. No, our plan was to get it into the Windows 95 full package, if possible.
Why is he doing that? Well, because Microsoft were charged with violating the Sherman Act, which is an antitrust act. In fact, they were found guilty in 1998 of violating antitrust laws. What's that about? Okay. Well, Bill Gates was an innovator, but he also wanted to be a monopolist. He wanted to keep other people out. He wanted to create his own Pyongyang. Maybe that's a bit too strong. He wanted to keep other people out. He wanted to get rid of competition. But the institutions wouldn't let him. The institutions made that difficult for him. So the law, the Antitrust Act, tried to keep the playing field level. It tried to allow other people to get into the computer industry, not just Bill Gates. You know, where did the Sherman Antitrust Act come from? On the next slide, we see a wonderful cartoon from early in the 20th century of a previous battle against monopolies, which is the battle against Standard Oil. So in the middle is an octopus. That's the Standard Oil Company. This is the great Rockefeller, probably the richest person in the world at the time. That's his monopoly, or an attempt to create a monopoly. You see, the head of the octopus is an oil drum with Standard Oil written on it. And he's got his tentacles around Congress, he's got his tentacles around the media, he's got his tentacles around the White House.
스탠더드 오일 창업자 록펠러는 미국 역사상 제가 알기로 가장 부자로 기록되는 인물이 아닌가 싶어요. 스탠더드 오일의 독점적인 이 구조가 어떻게 경제적 불평등을 초래하게 되었는지.
Well, I think, you know, they called them trusts at the time, that in this period of rapid economic growth following the end of the Civil War, there was a consolidation of monopolies and you know, industrial concentration in many parts of America. That has the effect of, you know, I think for me the most important effect is it restricts inclusion. It blocks opportunities. It means that innovators can't come. Rockefeller wanted to keep everybody out, so he dominated everything like Carlos Slim. So then your talent is blocked. Talent can't find a way. So you're blocking new innovations.
그럼 당시에 스탠더드 오일의 횡포를 아무도 막지 못했던 건가요?
그런 독점이 나오다 보니까 1900년 전후에 그런 독점의 폐해가 늘어나서 스탠다드 오일도 정부가 해체했고요. 그리고 중앙은행인 연준이 생긴 것도 그 무렵인데 그게 1900년 전후에 미국 사회의 장점과 단점이라면 독점을 국가가 어떻게 나서서 개선하는가 하는 문제인데요. 그건 최근에 우리나라도 독과점 문제 있고 공정거래위원회가 점점 중요해지는 것도 똑같은 이유라고 생각합니다.
그때가 1900년 초에 사실은 굉장히 놀라운 게 머크레이커라면 탐사 보도를 하는 여성 이다 타벨이라는 기자가 있는데 그 기자가 잡지에서 19회에 걸쳐서 이 스탠더드 오일의 비리를 파헤치는 연속 보도를 했습니다.
와.
반독점의 어떤 스탠더드 오일이 깨지는 그러한 일이 벌어졌다는 게 저로서는 굉장히 중요한 어떻게 보면 여론과 미디어 역할이 그때 작용하지 않았나라는 생각을 합니다.
제가 한 가지 교수님께 좀 질문을 하고 싶은 게 있는데 그 당시 록펠러 같은 경우에는 정치인 매수했고 그다음에 경쟁사 매수했고 시장 자체를 다 조작하는 사람이었는데 언론사만 매수 못한 이유가 딱히 있을까요?
Well, he tried, you know, he tried, but I think there was a civil society that was independent of these economic interests, that was independent of the state, and I think the civil society managed to stay autonomous. Institutional changes came, for example, the direct election of the Senate, to try to make it more difficult for corporations to corrupt politics. And I think this example of Bill Gates and Carlos Slim and monopoly and competition sort of shows you the difference between inclusive and extractive institutions and the connections to innovation and economic growth.
My father was a sort of itinerant engineer who spent most of his life working in Africa, working, in Asia, in everywhere. So we grew up in all sorts of places. We lived in the Caribbean and Barbados and Trinidad. And so I think, I grew up in a house where I was very aware from my own family history of these enormous differences in the world. And when I was a sort of teenager in England in the 1970s, I sort of understood, okay, this is England, but the rest of the world is very different. Like, why is that? Of course, I had no idea how to think about that.
제가 듣기로는 우리 교수님이 아프리카에서 보낸 경험이 지금의 영국까지 이어졌다라는 얘기를 들어서 저희가 또 특별히 콩고 출신의 미아를 스튜디오에 초대했습니다. 안녕하세요. 인사 좀 부탁드릴게요.
안녕하세요. Actually, my name is Muriel Ndolosumbu, and I came from the Democratic Republic of Congo. I know that most of people think that Congo is a really poor country, like basically. But when we look at the resources, we have so many resources, like such as cobalt, gold, diamond, and so many things. But because of the poor governance of the politics, so yes, we're still in a bad situation politically and economically still now.
그럼 지금 콩고가 여전히 후진국이고 성장하지 못하는 이유가 착취적인 경제 때문이라고 생각하시나요?
Yes, I will say definitely yes. Actually, the history of Congo itself is based on extractive economic system. Unfortunately, until now, our government and the politics, they are still doing the same things. Like, for example, the major companies belongs to a certain elite. And when they just own those companies, they only work with their families. So basically, the population, they don't have any opportunity to do whatever they want. So it's only one group of elite who does.
Africa, at the time of colonization, at the time of the scramble for Africa, Africa was divided into tens of thousands of independent political communities. In fact, my calculation is 45,000 independent political communities. And this notion of wealth in people became institutionalized in many ways through kinship systems, through clans, through enormous emphasis on the community. One of the consequences of that was it became very difficult to create the type of centralized states that emerged in Korea, historically that emerged in Western Europe. So at independence in 1960, Congo had hundreds of different societies with different institutions, different political systems, and now they had to govern from Kinshasa. They had to govern this country. And I think the fundamental problem in Congo is they've never solved that problem of creating a working national social contract. So at a local level, many things work extremely well. But at the national level, that local order finds no echo in some sense. So Botswana is very different. Why? Because Botswana, the territory that became Botswana, was occupied by 9 separate Tswana polities, very similar political institutions, and they were able to take those political institutions and recreate them at the national state in 1965. So they were able to solve this problem that the Congolese have never been able to solve, or the Nigerians have not been able to solve, of taking that African logic and making it work in the national state.
남아프리카에 위치한 보츠와나. 아프리카에서 가장 빠르게 성장하는 국가입니다. 1966년 독립 당시만 하더라도 최빈국이었지만 현재는 사하라 이남에서 1인당 국민 소득이 가장 높습니다. 보츠와나의 운명을 가른 것은 바로 다이아몬드. 2024년에는 2,492캐럿에 달하는 초대형 다이아몬드 원석이 발견됐습니다. 다이아몬드는 보츠와나 경제를 성장시키는 핵심 동력입니다. 보츠와나에서 발견된 다이아몬드는 소수의 엘리트가 아닌 국가로 귀속되고 이를 통해 창출한 재원은 국민을 위한 교육과 보건, 공공 서비스에 투입됩니다.
I went for school for free, just like most Botswana. From primary to tertiary, our healthcare is basically free. My kids are also benefiting from that.
다른 아프리카 국가들처럼 다이아몬드가 분쟁의 원인이 되지 않았던 건 정치제도 덕분이었습니다. 보츠와나의 초대 대통령인 세레체 카마는 보츠와나에서 나는 모든 광물의 권리가 국가에 귀속되도록 법에 명시해 부의 독점을 막았습니다. 최근 선거에서는 평화적인 정권 교체로 아프리카에서 가장 민주적이고 법치가 잘 이루어지는 나라임을 증명하기도 했습니다. 이것이 가능했던 건 보츠와나의 오랜 전통 덕분입니다. 바로 전통회의인 코틀라. 3개월에 한 번 주민 전체가 모여 마을의 문제를 논의합니다. 이곳에서 양보와 타협이 이뤄집니다. 코틀라는 보츠와나가 포용적 제도를 발전시킬 수 있었던 중요한 제도입니다.
Kotla system in our culture works very well because when he says people should come to the Kotla, they should come, and that is where most of the issues are discussed, and people are free to say out their views in the Kotla meetings, but in a polite manner.
Were basically, they took their political institutions, which were based on a type of council called a khotla, and they were able to recreate those institutions in the national state. So the traditional mechanisms of accountability, many traditional societies in Congo had councils, they had mechanisms of representation, they had accountability, they had all sorts of political institutions, but they were never able to make those political institutions work in Kinshasa, in the national state. The national state is disconnected from the rest of society. That's the typical problem in Africa. But in Botswana, they solved that problem because they were able to, there was a commonality in these institutions throughout Botswana, and that allowed them to agree on taking these traditional political institutions and making them work at the national levels.
네, 콩고에 대한 이야기를 들으니까 경제 재앙을 초래한 이유가 문화나 지리적인 요인보다는 제도 때문이라는 말씀이셨던 것 같아요.
Okay, so now we can go back to Korea. South Korea has transformed itself because it adopted inclusive economic institutions, it innovated and grew. So let me show you some data on that. How do I know it innovated and grew? Let me show you some data on South Korea. Okay? So here's some countries in the world: China, Japan, the United States, South Korea. So relative to the size of the population, South Korea allocates enormous amounts of people to research and development, okay? And that arc maps that economic transition, okay? It goes from far below Germany or Japan to far above, all right? So Korea is allocating a lot of resources, people into innovation, research and development. That's an input to innovation, you could say. You might be more interested in the outputs. So how do you measure outputs? Patenting, back to patents, okay? So the intensity of patenting in a society is a way of measuring new ideas, innovation. People come up with ideas, they take out a patent. How does Korea look? Looks amazing, okay? Back in the 1980s, more or less nothing. Rockets. In fact, relative to the size of population, Korea is probably the most innovative country in the world. We could do this too with scientific, you know, we're academics, so we like to look at research output in academic journals, in scientific journals. Somebody asked me last week, why aren't there any Korean Nobel Prize winners in economics? It's coming, it's coming. Okay, so here again you see South Korea relative to the population now is basically at the level of the United States. This is an expansion of intellectual life, and I'm coming to that more generally. You know, I don't think innovation in South Korea, what makes the country so exciting is it's not just about mobile phones and cars, okay? It's about intellectual life too, okay? And that shows that. So, you know, I was walking down the street in Cambridge, England. I was at a conference in Cambridge, England, and I went past, you know, Korean barbecue, Korean culture, you know, and then I got to Pure Soul, which is K-beauty. Okay? And I thought, like, this is the genius of capitalism, you know, in some sense. You know, it starts maybe with K-pop. You know, I have the most recent K-pop up here, the Demon Hunters, which everybody's obsessed with in the United States. my son. I have a 10-year-old son. He's completely obsessed with this movie. And of course, K-pop stars have perfect skin. So why not take advantage of that and leverage it? And now, my dermatologist at the University of Chicago Medical School tells everyone, Korean cosmetics, that's the top. Okay, so this is everything. This is what you get. This is this explosion of creativity. How did Korea succeed in doing this? Okay, but for me, this is just like mobile phones and Hyundai and shipbuilding, and this is about creativity. This is about unlocking people's talent and ideas and passion, and that's what inclusive institutions do.
한국 사회의 포용적 제도는 다양한 재능을 꽃피우게 했고 그 힘은 이제 전 세계로 뻗어나가고 있습니다. 이렇듯 포용적 제도는 사회 전체에 창의성과 혁신의 기회를 열어주는 기반이 되어줍니다.
제가 궁금한 게 작년 노벨상 수상자 중에서 한강 작가가 계시는데 한강 작가가 쓰신 글 중에 많은 것은 한국이 경제적으로는 굉장히 포용적이지만 정치적으로는 그만큼 포용적이 못한 여러 가지 그 불행한 스토리에 대한 것을 가지고 글을 쓰셨고 그게 이제 전 세계에 몰입을 가졌는데 혹시 연구하시면서 그런 경제적인 포용성과 정치적인 포용성이 같이 갈 때와 따로 갈 때에 대한 게 어떤 특별한 이유가 있는지 아니면 어떻게 생각하시는지.
I mean, our theory is about, the causal chain is from political inclusion to economic inclusion. I think the puzzling thing, in Korea is how is it after all this success, political institutions are still challenged. How come the president can basically try to mount a coup d'etat after all of these successes associated with democratization of society? I'm not sure I understand the answer to that. There's several things I could say. One thing is, it's sort of imaginable. It's only 30 years ago that there was dictatorship, military dictatorship in this country, 35 years ago. And many people remember that. And so they can somehow imagine that. It's in what you could call the Overton window, if you know that expression. It's imaginable. And that's a problem. And, what could also be a problem is that you can imagine that people did well. Things were going well under President Park, So things did well under the military. So why not again? So the success of President Park creates a problem for you now. So I think it's very important to stress, we did well under President Park, but we did even better after he left, okay? That's true as a fact, and it's very important to remember that, okay?
오늘 말씀해 주신 한국에 대한 평가가 사실은 굉장히 크게 와닿았는데요. 한편으로는 한국의 경제 발전 과정을 굉장히 긍정적으로 보시고 미래에 대해서도 긍정적으로 보시는 것이 한편으로는 감사드리면서 큰 책임감을 느꼈습니다. 그러니까 저희가 진짜 이런 포용적인 제도와 이런 경제 발전이 어떤 다른 국가한테도 굉장히 좋은 본보기로 하려면 지금부터도 우리가 정말 계속적인 포용적인 제도를 유지해야 되고 또 세계에서 뭔가에 더 큰 역할을 해야 되지 않나라는 생각도 들어서 앞으로도 정말 젊은 세대가 해야 될 일이 많을 거라는 생각을 하면서 오늘 좋은 시간을 가졌습니다.
I say one thing about role model, though. I think that's exactly right. You got that exactly right. Like, Korea is a role model, and Korea should be really proud about what they achieved. You know, I've noticed going around the world talking to people, one of the most pernicious things is who countries choose to compare themselves to. Like in Colombia, for example, if you talk to elites in Colombia, they'll say, well, we're doing really well compared to Guatemala. And I say, no, 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 no. That's not your aspiration. You should be like the United States. There's nothing about this country that could stop it being like the United States. But for them, they justify their extractive institutions by saying, look, Guatemala has income of $2,000. We have $6,000. We're 3 times as wealthy, as successful as Guatemala. Aren't we doing great? So those things are important, actually. They're important. And I think what Korea has always done, Korea has never done that. You don't justify anything by pointing at North Korea and saying, oh, look, we're so important. We're so more successful. No, the sky is the limit. And that's very important. And I think Korea is a role model for other countries because what you've achieved here, you know, in the wake of civil war, under the threat of invasion, you know, many challenges, dictatorship, getting the military under control. Many poor countries face all the challenges that you have overcome in the last 60, 70 years. And that's a story you should be telling everybody. What's going to happen in China is growth will slow down and it will disappear because innovation will disappear. And it's got so far in the United States because people have lost faith in institutions.
Historical trauma, why institutions are so persistent, but also why they sometimes, because